You're listening to international investment advisor Doug Goldstein on the Goldstein on Gelt Show, the financial show where we'll talk about how you can make the most of your money. With all the confusing financial chatter bombarding you each and every day, Goldstein on Gelt will give you the practical information you want and need about living a financially stable life. Here's your host, money maven Doug Goldstein.
Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt Show John Manning, who is the president of MAP Consulting and the author of the new book, probably destined to be a bestseller, called The Disciplined Leader, Keeping the Focus on What Really Matters. John, a real pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
So you are a disciplinarian, and you wrote a book about discipline, and it's kind of a funny topic, I think, especially today, because, well, in a lot of areas, that's considered not something people really want to talk about too much, but you seem to just be shouting it from the rooftops. Why is that? That's
a great question. You know, when in doing research for the book, the first thing that I found out about discipline was that when I asked about the subject of discipline leadership, that people gave answers all over the board. So, I went out and asked, my trusted colleagues and coworkers, I said, how would you define discipline leadership? And it was amazing, some of the answers. And to the point of your question, some of those were negative. People remembered being, a child and being disciplined by their parents. And so there was even some negative connotations around discipline. So we thought it was important to define that up front. And we define discipline leadership as really somebody who uses the consistent application of certain mindsets and actions that are vital for success. And there's some couple of key words in there. The idea of consistently, you could think of habits, being consistent at good habits, because we found that good leadership was rooted in the idea that they consistently applied good habits in their leadership. And so when they were leading their team, everybody knew who was going to show up every day. They were predictable in their behavior, and it became, an environment where success was created in alignment through that idea that the leader was following a certain habits and good practices and driving the company forward.
So let's go back to the premise of what you said, and then we'll move on to some of the details. The premise that you had is that there's a certain system involved, and I think that goes counter to what some people would say is being more of a free thinker and opening up your mind and trying to explore. How can the two come together?
Well, I think that when you think about the idea of what your talents or your abilities are, or those things you're talking about, opening up your horizons, I think those are all important parts of not only in leadership, but in life overall. But the idea of not seeing discipline as something that put walls around that, but more of a vehicle to do that effectively. Because you can have talent, you can have charisma, you can have all those abilities that, God-given abilities or things that you develop in skills. But if you don't find a way to harness that through some system, it's hard to really reach your potential. And so that's what the idea of this premise is, that it's not so much something that contains somebody, but it really gives them a vehicle to move ahead.
John, I'm going to ask you one more question about the premise, and then we'll go on to the details, because I really want to make sure that everyone's on board with what you're saying. It seems to me, if we maybe use a military metaphor, that in the Army, the sergeant is in charge of the discipline, but the general is the leader. And I think they're two very different roles. Again, I'm going to ask you the question, how do you relate to that issue? How can it be that if people want to be real leaders and revolutionary leaders, it's true they hire sergeants to do the discipline, but do they also have to be on the disciplinary page?
To that question, I think that both need to be disciplined. So, for example, in your example, a sergeant in a military, he's providing that structure and that discipline for the troops that report to him, and he's in command of them. And he's focused on what his vital few are in terms probably at the beginning around conditioning and the idea that his troops are combat ready and all those things that are put in place to do that. Now flip that to a general. He's got to be disciplined, but at a strategic level. He might be focused on different things, but he still has to apply the right habits and the right mindset for his job. So the idea is, if he's not disciplined and he's not leading, for example, how can he expect that from the people that are below him? And so even though he's more strategic in nature and thinking about the big picture, he still has to apply whatever his vital few are, his vital few habits that make him successful at that position.
We're talking with John Manning, who is the author of The Disciplined Leader, Keeping the Focus on What Really Matters, and he is the president of MAP Consulting. He's been describing to us, and maybe, John, I should apologize a little bit because I really wanted to dig into the premise there, but he's been describing the importance of discipline in leadership. John, one of the terms you used, I know it went by a little bit quickly, but you spoke about what you referred to as the vital few. Could you define what you meant by that?
Sure, Doug. Out of all the questions I've been asked in the book, that's the question I get asked the very most. So people always say, well, I sort of conceptually get the idea that focusing on what really matters is the vital few. So let me give you a couple examples. You have your vital few in your job. You have your vital few at a company level or organization level. You have your vital few in life. So the vital few in a job could be things like, I'm responsible to drive sales. I'm responsible to drive revenue. And when you're focused on activities that accomplish that, you're focused on your vital few. But in business today, people are so busy doing so many things that we call it the trivial many. There's days where maybe people leave work and they go, I didn't get a thing done to accomplish my goal. So that's an example of it at a job level. At a business level, you have a vital few. It's the things that really matter. If you're in, it could be product quality. It could be delivering outstanding customer service. It's those vital few at a company. If everybody aligns to them, they'll create success at a company. And when that happens,
I just want to get the definition. So you're referring to this focus on the few things that you need to do instead of getting scattered all over the board.
Right. It's the 20% of activities that really drive 80% of your results. And it's really rooted in the Pareto principle, which Pareto was an Italian economist and he coined that phrase, but it really applies to business. Even at a life level, you have your vital few that you need to focus on. So if you're watching TV, you probably say to yourself, well, that's not one of my vital few. But if you're talking about things like your family, your health, your business, your finances, those are the vital few you have in life. And people who do a better job of focusing in on what really matters, even at their life, tend to grow and develop and succeed.
Well, I want to jump on one of the words you used because a friend of mine, John Lee Dumas, who has a podcast called Entrepreneur on Fire. It's one of the most successful podcasts in the whole blogosphere. And he always says that the word focus, F-O-C-U-S, is an acronym for follow one course until success.
Fantastic.
And I've quoted that so many times, follow one course until success. Now,
right.
John, in my day job, I'm a financial advisor. I work with normal people who are planning for their retirement or for getting their kids into school and how to save and how to invest. And exactly what you said is what I tell them. And I'm liking the vocabulary you have. I think I may adopt it myself, which is there's a million things that you can do in the world of investing, but you have to focus on the vital few. And I think that for normal investors, they shouldn't be worried about which stock or bond or option to be trading. They should be looking at their family and their specific goals and who they are and their own tolerance for risk. That's the very few things they should focus on. And that's what you referred to as the vital few. So now let me say a question. You had said also earlier that good leaders have good habits, and we've spoken about that a great deal on the Goldstein on Gelt Show. One of the issues that I find is that when I talk to clients about developing good financial habits, well, sometimes I feel like I'm just speaking to deaf ears. No one really wants to do it, and I think it's something that you either learned when you were a kid or you weren't. Are you able to teach people to develop good habits?
Yeah, I think we're able. I don't know if we can teach them good habits, but we coach them around good habits. The book lays out in 3 areas. It's really the ability to, lead and manage yourself, your team, and then your organization. But let's go back to yourself for a minute. It's exactly what you're hitting on there. There's certain fundamental things that you have to start with yourself. And to your point about you really peer in the mirror, for example, and realize where am I at in life in terms of my values, what I find important, how do I communicate? How do I develop relationships? How am I taking care of my family, to your point? How am I doing on my finances? And really take a good look at yourself, because if you don't build a good foundation, you can't really extend your impact to others. You can't extend your impact even to your own family, to your organization you're working for or the community. And so I think it really starts with taking a good look at yourself. And I think that the starting point on that, and you'd probably agree with this being in the financial world, is to really, failing to plan is planning to fail, right? And so it's really about understanding, even at a life level, what's my plan? We do coach clients on a life plan, and I guess that's where I'm going with this is we have a format and a process to take them through, and a lot of times they'll do this with their spouse. And we'll talk about their business professional goals, but we also talk about in terms of where they want to go on a personal level. And that touches into your area. We talk about what are their financial goals? Where do they want to be? What does retirement look like? And it's really and I'm sure you experienced this yourself, but that is a disciplined process to take them through. And it sort of gives them that blueprint for all of a sudden, I had all these dreams in my head, but now they become reality. And so that's probably one of the things, how we coach clients around that.
I think that's very important. John, we started the discussion and I was a little bit afraid of the word discipline, but I think the way you're describing it is as a system that people can follow that in whatever field they are, whether it's their personal finance or running a company and even working in a company. I don't think that you're only talking to the presidents and CEOs, but you're talking to people on the whole spectrum, which is so important if people can develop these strategies. And I'm guessing that they can learn it from your book. So, John, unfortunately, we're just about out of time. But in the last few seconds, tell us, how can people follow you and follow your work?
Well, thanks, Doug. Well, the book, The Disciplined Leader, Focus on What Really Matters, is available on Amazon. And if you'd like to know more about our company, you can go to mapconsulting.com. I've got a blog there you can subscribe to that I put out a new blog every week, and we'd really appreciate it if you visit our website. So I want to thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you. And we will put links to all of that at the show notes of today's show at goldsteinongelt.com. John Manning, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Doug.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.